car show. They done canceled it, man. The car show has been canceled. So not going to be able to go there and go live and give y'all that exclusive content. I want to, but I know I ain't going to be able to do it, man. But, man, look at her, man. It don't seem to amaze me, man. It don't matter, you know what I'm saying, what Trump say or do or whatever. There's always somebody trying to knock this man. And then you got Joe Biden, you know what I'm saying, just held this press conference, man. I'm finna let y'all check it out. Man, this is crazy, bro. I ain't even gonna hold you, man. This is just straight up fucking crazy, man. Joe Biden got up there, man, and pretty much made himself look bad, bro. He made himself look bad. So with that being said, car show was canceled today, but the wrestling event, we're going live a little bit later on today at there. I'm going to be interacting with the wrestlers backstage, so y'all guys get to see some exclusive content. But with that being said, man, we finna get into this video, bro. We got to get into this press conference, man. We got to get into it. I ain't even going to hold you. We got to see what this dude talking about, man, which is nothing. Man ain't talking about nothing, man. Man, this is crazy, man. This is crazy, bro. Y'all got to check this thing out here, boy. Y'all got to check this thing out, man.
Ban books. Did you ever think if anybody over 30 years old you'd go through a period where banning books in America? They're trying to erase black history. We're going to write black history because it's American history. It's American history. Together we make history, not erase it. To me, the values of diversity, equality, inclusion are literally, and that's not kidding, the core strengths of America. The threat that Trump poses is greater in his second term than his first. It's clear that when he lost in 2020, something literally snapped in the sky. No, I'm serious. That's why January 6th happened, when he unleashed an insurrection. Now, he's running again, and he's clearly unhinged. He calls insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol patriots. Patriots. If reelected, he wants to pardon, quote, every one of them. Let me ask you, what do you think he would have done on January 6th if black Americans had stormed it? Think about this. What do you think would have happened if black Americans had stormed the Capitol? I don't think he'd be talking about pardons. It's the same guy who wanted to tear gas you as you peacefully protested George Floyd's murder. The same guy who still calls the Central Park Five guilty, even though they were exonerated. He's that landlord who denies housing applications because of the color of your skin. He's that guy who won't say Black Lives Matter and invokes neo-Nazi Third Reich terms. We all remember Trump is the same guy who unleashed birthism, the birthism lie against Barack. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let Donald Trump be the reason to stop doing that. I'll be damned if I'm going to let Donald Trump. I'm not going to let Donald Trump turn America into a place that doesn't believe in honesty, decency, and treating people with respect. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let Donald Trump turn America into a place filled with anger and resentment and hate. Folks, America's always been a place where we work toward more perfect union, where those who are excluded in the past are included in the promise of the country today.
Say definitively that the surge principles would not work in Afghanistan, certainly accounting for different conditions in that different country, and conditions are certainly different. We have NATO allies helping us for one, and even the geographic differences are huge. But the counterinsurgency principles also could work in Afghanistan. McClellan didn't say anything opposite of that. The counterinsurgency strategy going into Afghanistan, clearing, holding, rebuilding the civil society and the infrastructure can work in Afghanistan. And those leaders who are over there, who have also been advising George Bush on this, have not said anything different but that. Senator.
Well, our commanding general did say that. The fact of the matter is that, again, I'll just put in perspective, while Barack and I and Chuck Hagel and Dick Lugar have been calling for more money to help in Afghanistan, more troops in Afghanistan. John McCain was saying 2 years ago, quote, the reason we don't read about Afghanistan anymore in the paper, it succeeded. Barack Obama was saying we need more troops there. Again, we spend in 3 weeks on combat missions in Iraq more than we spent in the entire time we have been in Afghanistan. That will change in the Barack Obama administration.
Senator, you have quite a record. This is the next question here of being an interventionist. You have argued for intervention in Bosnia and Kosovo, initially in Iraq and Pakistan, and now in Darfur, putting U.S. troops on the ground, boots on the ground. Is this something the American public has a stomach for?
Well, I think the American public has a stomach for success. And my recommendations on Bosnia, I admit I was the first one to recommend it, they saved tens of thousands of lives. And initially, John McCain opposed it along with a lot of other people. But the end result was it worked. And look what we did in Bosnia. We took Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks, being told by everyone, I was told by everyone, that this would mean that they've been fighting and killing each other for 1,000 years. It could never work. There's a relatively stable government there now, as there is in Kosovo. With regard to Iraq, I indicated that it would be a mistake to go into. I gave the president the power. I voted for the power because he said he needed it not to go to war, but to keep the United States, the UN in line, to keep sanctions on Iraq and not let them be lifted. Along with Dick Lugar, before we went to war, said if we were to go to war without our allies, without the kind of support we needed, we'd be there for a decade. It cost us tens of billions of dollars. John McCain said no, that was going to be okay. I don't have a stomach for genocide when it comes to Darfur. We can now impose a no-fly zone. It's within our capacity. We can lead NATO if we're willing to take a hard stand. We can. I've been in those camps in Chad. I've seen the suffering. Thousands and tens of thousands of people have died and are dying. We should rally the world to act, and we should demonstrate it by our own movement to provide the helicopters to get those 21,000 forces of the African Union in there now to stop this genocide.
Thank you, Senator. Governor.
Oh man, it's so obvious that I'm a Washington outsider and someone just not used to the way you guys operate, because here you voted for the war and now you oppose the war. You're one who says, you know, as so many politicians do, I was for it before I was against it, or vice versa. Americans are craving that straight talk and just want to know, hey, if you voted for it, tell us why you voted for it. And it was a war resolution. And you had supported John McCain's military strategies pretty adamantly until this race, and you had opposed very adamantly Barack Obama's military strategy, including cutting off funding for the troops that attempt all through the primary. And I watched those debates, and so you know, I remember what those were all about. But as for Darfur, we can agree on that also. The support of the no-fly zone, making sure that all options are on the table there. Also, America is in a position to help. What I've done in my position to help as the governor of a state that's pretty rich in natural resources.
Good evening. This is a big night at the White House, celebrating 75 years of the greatest alliance the world has ever known. Jill and I are honored to have so many close allies and close friends all in the same room. 75 years ago, when our nations created NATO, former President Truman said, and I quote, what we're about to do here is a neighborly act. A neighborly act. The allies in this room not only share a common language, don't share a common language, we do not share a common border, but we are neighbors. We're neighbors because we all share common beliefs in dignity, equality, democracy, and freedom. And we're all neighbors because we're there for one another. The neighborhood I grew up in, that's what you do. When the neighbor needed help, you pitched in. When the bullies threatened the block, you stepped up. When a bad snowstorm hit, you shared supplies and made sure everyone was safe. When a new family moved into the neighborhood, you welcomed them with open arms. And why did we do this? Because we knew we were in it together. We knew that our own house was safer when the entire neighborhood was as well. This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of our alliance. Over the last 75 years, it has allowed our people to reach for new possibilities. It's allowed our nations to meet any threat with strength and resolve. And above all, allowed women and men of generations to know the lives of freedom, security, and democracy. So please join me in raising your glasses. Got one for the boss.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Manny, how are you?
Bro, where's the soy milk? I'll eat.
To NATO and to our neighborhood of nations, may we continue to grow stronger and closer in all the years ahead. Now I'd like to invite my friend, Secretary Stoltenberg, before to NATO. It's all yours, boss. Thank you.
President Biden, dear Joe, Madam First Lady, dear Jill, thank you so much for hosting all of us here tonight at the White House. This is an historic building. This is a special place with a lot of history. And many decisions have been taken here that has shaped not only this nation, but also shaped the North Atlantic Alliance, NATO. So it's great for all of us to be here tonight. But this is more than an important political building. This is also your home, the place you live. So thank you for having us over for dinner tonight. And as you know, in all cultures, at all time, sharing a meal, being together, having a dinner, is one of the strongest expression of trust, of friendship, and of family. And tonight we are a family, the big transatlantic NATO family, with our closest friends, with our friends from Ukraine, with our friends from the Asia Pacific. So therefore this is really a big extended family dinner. And we are so happy, also because we are here together with our spouses and our partners. And it's not always easy to be married to a politician. But therefore we are extremely grateful that you have joined us tonight and during the summit, and that we can spend this evening together. We are not a normal family with totally normal friends and partners, because we are a military alliance with close partners that we work together with every day. So therefore, a toast for the most successful, the strongest, and the longest lasting alliance in history. Yeah, okay. Toast. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, cheers for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO.
All right.
Yeah.
I hope you're okay. Don't get hit in the head. Up north. Try. You want something? By the way, I heard. Good news. Good news is right. I tell you what, that's because of the Prime Minister.
Not lost a game under the Labour government in 2024.
It's not we had Prime Minister.
It looks like it.
Well, welcome. And it's good that we had a long conversation on the phone, and you wanted to give me your hand there, pal. And we're the best of allies maybe in the whole world. And we really need to continue to cooperate. And a lot we can talk about. And I think that start off, we can talk about what we call football, what we call soccer. By the way, soccer has become incredibly popular here in the United States. It really is growing. And but at any rate, there's a lot going on. I think you're seeking closer ties in Europe. Good for all of us in Transatlantic Alliance. I think it's a great idea that we're going to be working together on. So we had a good meeting today, NATO.
Very good.
Very good meeting, and I think we can move in the right direction. I feel really optimistic about what you can do. But welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and firstly, congratulations on a really successful summit. It's been an incredibly important moment, 75 years, a bigger NATO, a stronger NATO, and a NATO with the resolve that we need. I thought the medal, the honour for Jens Stoltenberg yesterday was very special. I don't think he was expecting it.
No, he wasn't. I owe him because he was leaving. And I intervened when he was going to leave, and I sort of got my knees in bed and said, "No, I'm only kidding." I talked to him in the stand, and his wife still talked to me. She spoke to me yesterday.
I had lunch with him when he was just about to go to the central bank and was saying, "I'm free." And then you spoke to him, and he's still in the job.
He's done a great job. Done a great job.
But the special relationship is so important. It's forged in difficult circumstances, endured for so long, and stronger now than ever. So we're very pleased to be able to come so early in the government to recommit to NATO, to recommit to the special relationship, and to have the opportunity to discuss these affairs with you is really important for us.
I figured I kind of see you guys as the knot tying the transatlantic alliance together. The closer you are with Europe, when you're engaged, the more, because we know where you are, we know where we are in both countries.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And now we go into a cup final on Sunday on top of all of that. So, very good. I actually I began to watch the game with the Netherlands, with the Prime Minister, but we left at one arm.
Well, you guys are still talking one another?
No, we haven't seen each other since.
Anyway, well, we got a lot to talk about. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Folks, if anyone wonders whether their vote matters, remember this. Because Black America voted in 2020, please have a seat if you can. Have a seat. Because Black Americans voted, Kamala and I are President and Vice President of the United States because of you. That's not hyperbole. Because you voted, Donald Trump is defeated former president. And with your vote in 2024, we're going to make Donald Trump a loser again. I'm keeping my promises that no one should be in jail merely for using and possessing marijuana. I pardoned thousands of people incarcerated for the mere possession of marijuana. Thousands. A promise made and a promise kept, and for the record should be expunged as well, I might add. MAGA extremists ban books. Did you ever think if anybody over 30 years old, you'd go through a period where we're banning books in America? They're trying to erase Black history. We're going to write Black history because it's American history. It's American history. Together we make history, not erase it. To me, the values of diversity, equality, inclusion are literally, and that's not kidding, the core strengths of America. The threat that Trump poses is greater in his second term than his first. It's clear that when he lost in 2020, something literally snapped in the sky. No, I'm serious. That's why January 6th happened, when he unleashed an insurrection. Now, he's running again. And he's clearly unhinged. He calls insurrectionists who storm the Capitol patriots. Patriots. If reelected, he wants to pardon, quote, every one of them. Let me ask you, what do you think he would have done on January 6th if Black Americans had stormed it? Think about this. What do you think would have happened if Black Americans had stormed the Capitol? I don't think he'd be talking about pardons. It's the same guy who wanted to tear gas you as you peacefully protested George Floyd's murder. The same guy who still calls the Central Park Five guilty, even though they were exonerated. He's that landlord who denies housing applications because of the color of your skin. He's that guy who won't say Black Lives Matter and invokes neo-Nazi third-right terms. We all remember Trump is the same guy who unleashed birthism, the birthism lie against Barack. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let Donald Trump be the reason to stop doing that. I'll be damned going to let Donald Trump turn America into a place that doesn't believe in honesty, decency, and treating people with respect. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let Donald Trump turn America into a place filled with anger and resentment and hate. Folks, America's always been a place where we work toward more perfect union, where those who were excluded in the past are included in the promise of the country today. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you. Hello, Wisconsin. Nick, thanks for that introduction. Look, before I get started, I want to set the record straight. Please sit down. I went to a Catholic high school in Delaware, taught by the Norbertine priest from St. Norbert's College. A little team called Green Bay. Now, here's the deal. We were the only high school in Delaware that overwhelmingly rooted for Green Bay. Not a joke, I'll tell you why. Every single Sunday. Not only did they have great teams at the time, I still do, but not only that, my theology professor at the Catholic school I went to was a guy named Riley, last name, and he had been drafted by the Green Bay Packers, and he decided to become a priest before that, so he didn't go. But every single solitary Monday that Green Bay won, we got the last period of the day off. Now, we Catholics call that indirect bribery, but it worked. It's always great to be with one of the best governors in America, Tony Evers. I think of Tony, I mean it. I think of one word, integrity. You're a man of absolute integrity. And what I'm really doing, I'm really auditioning for a job with a little company's going to build something out here. Thank you for the comments you made about what we're doing together. Well, look, while she couldn't be here, I want to thank one of the best U.S. senators in the United States of America, a good friend of mine, Tammy Baldwin. You also got a great mayor in Racine, Corey Mason.
The Colorectal Cancer Alliance is the largest nonprofit dedicated to ending colon and rectal cancers.
The Alliance is available and full of knowledge.
Brad Smith, President of Microsoft, thank you for your partnership, for showing how we get things done and big things done in America. And thank you for your friendship. I really mean it. Liz Schuller, President of LCA, thank you for all you do for benefit of the American Union movement. I got called the most pro-union president in American history. I make no apologies for it. I'm serious. Middle class built America, but unions built the middle class. I've been saying that for a long time. Folks, I'm here to talk about a great comeback story in America. I'm sure you remember, Racine was once a manufacturing boomtown all the way through the 1960s. Power companies invented and manufacturing Windex, portable vacuum cleaners, and so much more, and powered by middle-class jobs. And then came trickle-down economics, cut taxes for the very wealthy and the biggest corporations, beginning in the 60s. We shipped American jobs overseas because labor was cheaper. We slashed public investment in education and innovation. And the result, we hollowed out the middle class. My predecessor in his administration doubled down on that failed trickle-down economics, along with the trial of broken promises. Look, my dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, John, I mean this sincerely. My dad was a well-read man, never got to go to college, but he was a good man all across the board. And he'd say, Joey, remember, a job's a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your integrity. It's about your dignity. It's about being treated with respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, everything's going to be okay. In fact, 6 years ago, when my predecessor came to Racine with the promise of, quote, reclaiming our country's proud manufacturing legacy. Well, we had an infrastructure day every week for 4 years. Didn't build a damn thing. He and the administration promised a $10 billion investment by Foxconn to build a new manufacturing complex, create 13,000 new jobs. In fact, he came here with your Senator, Ron Johnson, literally holding a golden shovel, promising to build the 8th wonder of the world. Are you kidding me? Look what happened. They dug a hole with those golden shovels, and then they fell into it. Look, they didn't shovel other dirt. They did shovel some dirt. 100 homes were bulldozed. They wasted hundreds of millions of dollars, your state and local tax dollars, to promise a project that never happened. Foxconn turned out to be just that, a con. Go figure. In just 4 years under his administration, instead of creating 13,000 jobs in Racine, my predecessor and 1,000 manufacturing jobs, rather than creating them, 1,000 manufacturing jobs left Racine. 83,500 total jobs left Wisconsin during my predecessor's term. But that's not on my watch. We're determined to turn it around. Thus far, since we've come to office, we've created, and with the governor's overwhelming leadership, we've created over 178,000 jobs in Wisconsin. We're going to create more here in Racine, and big time. Some of my friends on the far right have criticized my Investing in America agenda, which includes my bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of businesses are supported as a key to economic growth that we're seeing now. Remember here, you're going to have a recession next week, no soft landing. Well, in fact, I've asked business leaders like Brad a simple question. When the United States decides to invest considerable resources in a new industry that we need to build, does that encourage or discourage them engaging? The answer overwhelmingly is it encourages business investment. And that's what we're seeing now with our administration. My Investing in America agenda is fueling historic boom in rebuilding our roads and bridges, developing and deploying clean energy, revitalizing American manufacturing, and so much more. So far, we've created $866 billion in private sector investment nationwide, almost $1 trillion. Historic amounts in such a short time. Now it's literally creating hundreds of thousands of jobs, building new semiconductor factories, electric vehicles and battery factories, and so much more, all here in America. Today, it's another example of private sector optimism. Microsoft, as the President already pointed out, is investing $3.3 billion to build a new data center here in Racine. That's going to help operate one of the most powerful artificial intelligence systems in the world, and I've gone around the world, literally, not figuratively, meeting with the leading architects of AI. It's going to result in 2,300 union construction jobs just to build a new facility. And 2,000 permanent workers to work in the data centers. In addition, we're also providing a pipeline to train these new jobs. A pipeline that starts right here at this very spot. Microsoft is partnering with Gateway Technical Community College right here to train and certify 200 students a year to fill high-demand, good-paying jobs in data and IT at Microsoft's new AI data center here in Racine. But that's not all. In addition, Microsoft is continuing a pipeline going to high schools in nearby Mount Pleasant to train high school students for jobs of the future. As the boss pointed out, it's going to create 100,000 jobs over time. It's all part of Microsoft's broad plan to build an artificial intelligence ecosystem right here in Racine. And it's going to be transformative, not here, just here, but worldwide. It's not only significant investment in infrastructure in Racine, but for the people of Racine. It means folks are getting trained in new, high-paying, high-skilled jobs that don't require a four-year college degree, don't require you to leave home. You know, where I come from, that really matters. I know what it's like when your parents have to move the family in search of work because there's no jobs. What it does to the family's dignity. My wife, Jill, who teaches full-time at a community college, cares a lot about this as well. Last year, she announced our first 5 workforce hub sites to build a pipeline of workers in industries that create the new hometowns. There are new hometowns in Phoenix, Baltimore, Columbus, Ohio, Augusta, Georgia, building everything from semiconductors to electric vehicles. Last month, I announced 4 new hubs to continue to train workers for the jobs of the future. One of which is in Milwaukee, that trains workers to help replace every poisonous lead pipe in America in a decade and funded by the infrastructure law. And by the way, Buy America has been the law of the land since the 30s, but it's been ignored by most administrations. Past administrations, including my predecessor, failed to buy America. Not anymore. Here's how it works. When the Congress sends something to the president to build something, whether it's a road, a highway, a deck of an aircraft carrier, whatever it is, that president, back to the law that was passed in the 30s, is supposed to hire American workers to build it and use American products. Well, on my watch and Tammy's leadership, federal projects like the Blending Bridge here in Wisconsin, it's going to cost $1 billion. But it's going to all American made, all American products, and all American work, and it's going to create 10,000 new jobs. 10,000. In addition, the roads and highways and so much more will be made with American products, built by American workers, creating good paying American jobs. What's happening in Racine is really important for another reason. We'll see more technical community colleges, technical changes needed in the next 10 years than we saw in the last 50. AI is already driving that change in every part of American life, from how we teach and learn to how we solve the biggest challenges, from curing cancer to climate change. America is a global leader in AI, and American companies lead the world in AI innovation, and a lot of what we're going to see here in Racine. Because of our initiatives, American workers will power that innovation here in America. But look, to get the full benefit of all this safeguards, we need safeguards. That's why, as the President pointed out, I signed the landmark executive order on which the most significant action any government has taken anywhere in the world has ever taken for AI safety, security, and trust. This order helps make sure workers have a seat at the table in determining how these technologies are developed and used. For real.
We shouldn't be having a debate.
We're live from Georgia, a key battleground state in the race for the White House. In just moments, the current U.S. president will debate the former U.S. president as their party's presumptive nominees, a first in American history. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world to our studios in Atlanta. This is the CNN presidential debate.
This debate is being produced by CNN and is coming to you live on CNN, CNN International, CNN.com, CNN Max, and CNN Espanol. This is a pivotal moment between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump in their rematch for the nation's highest office. Each will make his case to the American people with just over 4 months until Election Day. Good evening, I'm Dana Bash, anchor of CNN's Inside Politics and co-anchor of State of the Union.
I'm Jake Tapper, anchor of CNN's The Lead and co-anchor of State of the Union. Dana and I will co-moderate this evening. Our job is to facilitate a debate between the two candidates tonight. Before we introduce them, we want to share the rules of the debate with the audience at home. Former President Trump will be on the left side of the screen. President Biden will be appearing on the right. A coin toss determined their positions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question and 1 minute each for responses and rebuttals. An additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response is at the moderator's discretion.
When it's time for a candidate to speak, his microphone will be turned on and his opponent's microphone will be turned off. Should a candidate interrupt when his microphone is muted, he will be difficult to understand for viewers at home. At the end of the debate, each candidate will get 2 minutes for closing statements. There is no studio audience tonight. Pre-written notes, props, or contact with campaign staff are not permitted during the debate. By accepting our invitation to debate, both candidates and their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
How are you? Great to be here.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
I got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do was try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out a position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come from a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. The price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination of what was left with in corporate greed is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for an insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they could include beginning next year. And the situation is we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID, and when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, a bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that we find ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant. And the military, you know, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
You want allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. Now, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, More people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out, he did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country, and I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they in fact pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Was right, he did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion bill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex, but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states. Let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal. There's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters. It's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they would have, everybody wanted brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last, no politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period, period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, Constitutional Scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do, in fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board, at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. Significantly, by the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. It's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. All he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere, all over the world they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything across the border is one who came along and killed three, and his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person come in his administration, killed three American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorists ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people. That's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed three people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the two greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying, and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union, because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border. And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these three incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and they just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, and we have to get them out fast because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all. And he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved. Choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. Every single one. For example, veterans are a hell of a lot better off since they passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And he opposed, his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for a D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War II cemetery, World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker, you're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taking better care. I'm so glad this came up and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, a president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned. And so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president. They attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never
come back
said
to you
that.
for 1 minute. I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine.
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, by the way, all that money we give Ukraine from weapons we make here in the United States, we give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're finding the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so there are two different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent 100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any, they were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting old. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. Are you going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have, our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but are we ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. You see what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has never been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time. And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor in writing turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, he can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
President Biden?
Look, he encouraged those folks to go up on Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll not forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no. He went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court, and they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He didn't do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail, and they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out, and now he says that he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that it could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, and you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities, you go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that, they saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing, the Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now, out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage who's a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, just turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots? Come on. When I asked him those first two debates we had, the first time around, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boys? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing to, will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about now? Will you denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. after a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with the son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Take a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official at DOJ into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming around. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Did you ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run in the first place after my son died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And a young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said, "What do you think of those people? The people the ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones," he said, "I think they're fine people on both sides." What American president would ever say Nazis coming out of fields carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas were fine people? And this is the guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story's been totally wiped out. because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on that. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency is, without question, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden.
And debunk. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran. I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
They know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any Black family, first-time home buyer should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those Black families and those Black individuals who had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, and anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest was forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for Black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right, it's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing Black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the Black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking Black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking Black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 50% unemployment. He decimated the economy. Absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who are in vulnerable communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they had health insurance. We have covered, the ACA has increased. I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They've tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again. And they're going to try again if they win. You find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing any, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks. And that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs. And it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
You've 38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges, I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing in the environment. He, out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord, I immediately joined it, because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money, because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones. It was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it. And it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs, because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who are not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything? We're not able to, the United States can't get its pollution under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps where thousands of young people will learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements and cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
So every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're gonna, I'm proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent, but the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanted to cut Social Security and Medicare, both times. And and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that he, I believe, supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they in fact are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is, we're in a situation where we talk about education for Black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants by another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 towards the tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face. About so many other things too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. And everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing. And it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden.
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world. The reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put him there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border, that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think, we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He's the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We're the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We're the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody, number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up, go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history, one through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did for virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you, and they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the 2 of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I grow up and I see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he's increased the tariff, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that are very important. Number two, He's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he somehow helped the middle class. The middle class has been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You have the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are at the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot, and we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues and said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, this does pertain to it. He ended remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say there's a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter, I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago, but Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where he paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you.
Wait, we're in an airheads commercial. Want to skip it?
Thank you, President Trump. Dan?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars of private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought off a lot of people. The whole idea of computer chips. We used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and then bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call them, to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us, all of our allies, and those who he called us up to, from Kim Jong-un, we sent love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions, he couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they'd never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 225 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie, that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have,
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's not
act like children.
President Trump, we're going to turn
Let's not act like children.
to a specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and You will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable.
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose.
Well, it's only the weight of the nation.
In the world's history of the world. We should never forget that NATO grew out of the wreckage of World War II, the most destructive war in history. The idea was to create an alliance of free and democratic nations that would commit themselves to a compact of collective defense. Standing together, they knew we'd all be safer. An attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. And it's worked. Because a would-be aggressor knows if they attack one of us, they'll be attacked by all of us. Sending that message is the best way to deter aggression and prevent wars in the first place. For those who thought NATO's time had passed, they got a rude awakening when Putin invaded Ukraine. Some of the oldest and deepest fears in Europe roared back to life. Because once again, a murderous madman was on the march. But this time, no one cowered in appeasement, especially the United States. We collected intelligence that Russia was planning to invade Ukraine months before the invasion. I directed the intelligence community to be a significant amount of intelligence to be declassified so I could start building an international coalition to oppose the invasion. Then in February, some of you remember, I warned the world that the invasion was imminent. I rallied a coalition of 50 nations from Europe to Asia to help Ukraine defend itself. Many foreign policy experts thought, as Putin amassed Russian forces just 100 miles north of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, but Putin thought it was the mother home of Russia. The capital would fall in less than a week. But the Ukrainian people, backed by a coalition to help build, stopped them. Today, Kyiv still stands, and NATO stands stronger than it has ever been. During the week of this summit, several heads of states made it a point in their statements to thank the United States and to thank me personally for all that NATO has achieved. NATO is not only stronger, NATO is bigger, because we led the charge to bring in Finland and Sweden into the alliance. And it makes a gigantic difference. Excuse me. Meanwhile, my predecessor has made it clear he has no commitment to NATO. He's made it clear that he would feel no obligation to honor Article 5. He's already told Putin, and I quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." In fact, the day after Putin invaded Ukraine, here's what he said. It was genius. It was wonderful. Some of you forgot that, but that's exactly what he said. But I made it clear, a strong NATO is essential to American security. And I believe the obligation of Article 5 is sacred. And I remind all Americans, Article 5 is invoked only once in NATO's long history, and that was to defend America after 9/11. I made it clear that I will not bow down to Putin. I will not walk away from Ukraine. I will keep NATO strong. That's exactly what we did, and exactly what we'll continue to do. Now, the future of American policy is up to the American people. This is much more than a political question. It's more than that. It's a national security issue. Don't reduce this to the usual testament that people talk about, issues of being a political campaign. It's far too important. It's about the world we live in for decades to come. Every American must ask herself or himself, is the world safer with NATO? Are you safer? Is your family safer? I believe the American people know the answer to all those questions is yes. And I believe the American people understand that America is stronger because of our alliances. I believe the American consensus from Truman to Reagan to me still holds today. America cannot retreat from the world. We must lead the world. We are an indispensable nation, as Madeleine Albright wrote. Now let me turn to three other key issues. Just this morning, we had a great economic report showing inflation is down. Overall prices fell last month. Core inflation is the lowest it's been in 3 years. Prices are falling for cars, appliances, and airfares. Grocery prices have fallen since the start of the year. We're going to keep working to take down corporate greed to bring those prices down further. Meanwhile, Trump's calling for a 10% tariff on everything Americans buy, including food from overseas, vegetables, and other necessities. And economists tell us that would cost the average American working family another $2,500 a year. It's a tax of $2,500 a year. Second, our efforts to secure the border, so the border is working. After Trump killed the bipartisan effort to secure the border, Republicans and Democrats had worked on, because he thought it would benefit me and make him a loser, Republicans walked away. So I took executive action last month. As a consequence, working with Mexico, border encounters have gone down over 50%. The current level is lower today than when Trump left office. Third, for months, the United States has been working to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, to bring the hostages home, to create a path for peace and stability in the Middle East. 6 weeks ago, I laid out a detailed plan in writing. It was endorsed by the UN Security Council, the G7. That framework is now agreed on by both Israel and Hamas. So I sent my team to the region to hammer out the details. These are difficult, complex issues. There's still gaps to close. We're making progress. The trend is positive. And I'm determined to get this deal done and bring an end to this war, which should end now. Let me conclude where I began. We're the United States of America. We are the indispensable nation. Our leadership matters. Our partnerships matter. This moment matters. We must rise to meet it. With that, I'll take your questions. I've been given a list of people to call on here. Reuters, Jeff Mason.
Mr. President, your political future has hung over the NATO summit a little bit this week. Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside. Reuters is reporting tonight that UAW leadership is concerned about your ability to win.
UAW just endorsed me, but go ahead.
Thank you. My question for you is, how are you incorporating these developments into your decision to stay? And separately, what concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be Vice President because I think she was not qualified to be President. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again. Secondly, the idea, I served in the Senate a long time. The idea that senators and congressmen running for office worry about the ticket is not unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now, later in the campaign. So there's a long way to go in this campaign. And so I'm just going to keep moving
keep moving. And because, look, I got more work to do. We got more work to finish. There's so much, we made so much progress. Think about it. Think about where we are economically relative to the rest of the world. Name me a world leader who wouldn't want to trade places with our economy. We've created over 800,000 manufacturing jobs, 1.5 million jobs. I mean, so things are moving. We got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large. And the prices, the corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. They're coming down, and so I'm optimistic about where things are going. Daddy Kemp, AFP.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. Officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece I was talking.
Heroes come in all shapes and sizes.
Permission to come aboard.
Some you know well.
You gotta get us out of here.
I was the one that picked it. These lying people that they say, oh, he doesn't like Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee. I said, you got to fix the crime. We all know that. You got to make sure the election's honest. But I'm the one that picked Milwaukee, and the Democrats or the radical left lunatics, as I call them, what they say is just so terrible. They lie. They have a horrible candidate. They have a candidate that has no clue, doesn't know where he is, and all they can do is lie. I love it. I'm the one that picked Milwaukee officially. So, and you had, and I think you had about 10 congressmen in a meeting that we had recently where I said how much I like Milwaukee. They all came out. They said, that's what he said. We can't help it. And they're truthful people. But I just want to begin by saying, hello, Wisconsin. Hello. Great state. We've had great success here. It's great to be back in this beautiful state with thousands and thousands of proud, hardworking American patriots. What a crowd. What a crowd. With your help, 5 months from now, we're going to win Wisconsin. We're going to defeat your radical left Democrat senator, one of the worst in the Senate. Nobody even knows she's a senator. I mean, frankly, she's not doing a good job representing. We have somebody that's going to be great. So, but we're going to defeat your Senator Tammy Baldwin. We're going to elect Eric Hovde of this area, by the way, who's a great gentleman, and spent a lot of time with him. He and his wife are incredible people. He's going to be a great representative. They're going to be great representatives of your state. But we're going to elect him to the U.S. Senate. We're going to evict weak, failed, and incompetent Joe Biden. He's an incompetent person from the White House. And quite simply, we are going to make America great again. Less than 4 years ago, our border was secure, inflation was nowhere to be seen, the world was at peace, and America was strong and respected. We were respected all over the world. None of this stuff would have been happening that's happened now with Russia and Ukraine and the attack on Israel. None of it would have been happening. We would have had and we wouldn't have had a thing called inflation. That would have been nice too. But it was a different place 4 years ago, I think. But now we're going to make it better and bigger and stronger than ever before. But you had a president who put America first. I put America first. They put America last. Under crooked Joe Biden, the world is in flames. Our border is overrun. Inflation is raging. Europe is in total chaos. The Middle East is exploding. Iran is emboldened. China is on the march. And the worst, most incompetent, most corrupt president in history is going to drag us into World War III. Other than that, he's doing quite a good job, don't you think? Quite. Joe Biden is humiliating our country on the world stage. He's actually humiliating us. You saw what happened this weekend. It's turning the United States into a total joke all over the world. First, he wandered off the G7 in Europe, the stage. He looked like he didn't know where the hell he was, but he didn't know where he was. He's blaming it now on AI. He's saying he doesn't know what AI is, but that's okay. Now they're saying the media is manipulating. Oh, he's saying the media is manipulating. Now, on that one, I have to stick up for the media. I have to tell you. He said the media is manipulating the pictures of him constantly not knowing where the hell he is. They're doing just the opposite. They're making him look better. At the G7 in Europe, and he had to be rescued by other world leaders. They had to pull him back. Then he bizarrely put his face on the Pope's forehead. What was that all about? That was weird. Vivek is here. That was weird, Vivek. I don't know. Did you see the Pope? The Pope is like, what's happening? The Pope didn't really know what was happening. He said, this is strange. Then he froze during the celebration on the White House lawn. Then Barack Hussein Obama had to grab his hand and lead him off the stage as though he were a child. I have to tell you, Obama could have handled that differently. He could have done it a little bit softer. He could have done it like, let's go. Come. He didn't have to grab him and pull him off the stage, but he looked good, and I guess that was his primary purpose. He wanted to look good. He could have done a better job. In fact, the Biden people were very upset about that whole incident, but yet to be discussed. But Crooked Joe and his handlers are insisting he's sharper than ever, and they say the videos of Crooked Joe shuffling around are clean fakes. You know what a clean fake is? They're deceptively edited. They say they're deceptively edited. All of the mistakes that he's made every day. He can't go anywhere without a mistake. Now, if I'm perfect, they say he made a mistake. He did perfect. And I don't say clean fakes, although they do. They do that. They do that. They're the fake news. Look how many you have out there. They're all over the place. But with me, they take a good speech and they make it look as bad as possible. With him, they take the worst speech you've ever heard and they try and make him look like semi-normal. These are shameless liars who are trying to deceive you about other people, the people that represent Biden. They're shameless liars. They're the Russia people, the laptop from hell people, the 51 intelligence agent people. They're the people that said all sorts of lies about military, about our great military. They make up stories about our military. It's disgraceful what they can do, and they're so destructive to our country. They're the people that really destroy everything that they touch. That's why this November, the people of Wisconsin are going to tell Crooked Joe Biden, remember The Apprentice, you're fired. Get out. You've done a horrible job. You've done a horrible job. Worst president in history. Get out. You're fired. Get out. We can't get him out fast enough. I'm worried about the next 5 months. We could end up in World War III with this person. He's the worst president ever. The Biden administration has been nonstop catastrophe. He has been a catastrophe. It's been a nonstop catastrophe, but one of Crooked Joe's most destructive moves yet is the lawless executive action he's taking today. You've been reading in the middle of the largest border invasion in world history. There's never been a border in the world that's like this border that we have, where probably 17, 18 million people by now have entered our country illegally. Joe Biden's granting mass thinking. He's going to formally grant a mass amnesty to millions of illegal aliens that came into our country. And you have people that have been working for 10 years to try and come in legally, and they just keep working. Under this program, a deluge of illegals will be given immediate green cards and put on the fast track to rapid citizenship so they can vote. I think a lot of them are going to vote for me. You want to know the truth? Because if you look at the Hispanic population,
If you look at the black population, they're voting for Trump. They're voting for Trump. You, look at you. You. Thank you. I like that person right there. But they give them they give them welfare, they give them free health care, food stamps. Chain migration, one of the catastrophic things, one of the many catastrophic things that we're confronted with when they come in. Crooked Joe is sending a message to the world that he rewards illegal entry, and that's what's happening. They hear about all of the things that are coming in, and don't kid yourself, the ones that are hurt the most, the black population, the Hispanic population, and you know what else? Who else is hurt badly? Unions. Because unions are not able to compete with this. This is a mass entry into our country, and the unions are getting absolutely killed by it. All an illegal alien has to do is sign up for his new program. It's a sham marriage or college degree. Think of this. And they can expect amnesty and taxpayer support. They want to get taxpayer support. We are supporting people that come in illegally, but our soldiers, our veterans, are dying on the streets of these horribly run Democrat cities. Our country is under invasion. We should not be talking amnesty. We should be talking about stopping the invasion instead. This is an invasion of our country. We have to seal the border. We have to let people come into our country, but they have to come in legally. We have to send Joe Biden's illegal aliens back home where they belong. We have no choice. We have no choice. Don't forget, all over the world, the prisons, the jails, the mental institutions, the insane asylums, they're all being emptied out. And I don't blame them. I know the leaders. I know so many of the leaders. I had to deal with them. I dealt with them very nicely. I said, you don't behave, we're not going to give you any of the money. We pay them so much money and they do nothing. Get stolen all over the place. But I had a lot of things. We wanted to bring them back. They wouldn't let them come back. I was told that for years Obama couldn't get anybody out. We suffered with MS-13 by the thousands and thousands. They killed people. They cut up. 2 young girls cut up in Long Island, cut up to pieces and died by MS-13 monsters, and we couldn't get them out of our country. And I came back and I said, why? They said they won't take them back. Honduras, you take a look at Honduras, and any one of the Mexico to a certain extent, Mexico a little bit less, but we have countries all over South America, countries all over the world that wouldn't take them back. But in the case of the 4 countries, I said, here's what we do. El Salvador is an example, very tough, smart, good leader. But I would have been more advanced than him. I would have had the jails completely empty instead of almost empty. You know, if you take a look at Venezuela, you see what's happening there. 72% down in crime because they've taken their gangs, their drug dealers, also their prisoners. And where have they brought them? To the United States of America. Thank you very much. No. Who can believe that they allowed this to happen to our country? Now, who can believe that they would do this to our country? Now, Joe Biden doesn't have a clue. Now, we're going to watch. Is anybody going to watch the debate? He's going to be so pumped up. He's going to be pumped up. You know all that stuff that was missing about a month ago from the White House? What happened? Who left it? Somebody left it there. I wonder, let's see, somebody left a laptop in an office of a gentleman who was supposed to fix the laptop from hell. He never picked it up, and somebody didn't pick up hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cocaine. I wonder who that could have been. I don't know. Actually, I think it was Joe. But Crooked Joe's action today is an illegal, unconstitutional amnesty without approval from Congress, no approval from the courts or the American people, but he never does that. He did that with the tuition, and that didn't work out too well. He got rebuked, and then he did it again. It's going to get rebuked again, even more so. It's an even more vile attack. But he did that with tuition just to get the publicity for the election. He doesn't care about that. He just wants to see if he can get it by the election.
like with all my stuff, they get these people from all over, go after Trump. They never did this before. This is like third world country stuff. Go after Trump. But he did nothing wrong. That doesn't matter. Just go after him. Go after him. And we don't care what happens after the election. Just do it. Mess it up. No country has ever done this outside of a few third world horrible banana republics. Very rarely done. This Biden amnesty is a direct attack on American democracy, and yet another example is how Biden and his communists are demolishing our constitutional system and replacing it with a corrupt and fascist regime. These are fascists. These are bad people. And I don't think he's calling the shots. I'll be honest. I think he's not. I'm talking to you like a small little gathering of, 20,000 people. But I don't think he's calling the shots. I really don't. I almost sound when I talk about, Alphonse Capone was indicted less than Trump. I'd never heard the word indictment, and then all of a sudden, all that's coming from all different angles at me, all caused by Biden and his thugs. But it's not going to happen. It's interesting because we're doing better now than we've ever done because people know it's a scam. It's a big scam. And the Biden betrayal is not going to stand. When I'm reelected, Joe Biden's illegal amnesty plan will be ripped up and thrown out on the very first day that we're back in office. Because he's just using that group. But he's going to let everybody come in because you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to sign these people up and register them. They're not citizens. They're not allowed to do it. It's illegal as hell. We're filing court cases all over the place, including here, but we're filing court. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to use all of these people that are pouring into our country to vote. What other reason? Look, it's either they're stupid, they're not stupid. He is, but they're not stupid. The people that surround him, his leaders, his leaders aren't stupid. You can't cheat that well at an election to be stupid, okay? But, so you say they're either stupid or they hate our country, or the third thing is they want to sign people up to vote. And that's what they're doing right now. They're signing people up to vote. The people don't even know where they are. And they're getting them cards to vote. They're trying to register them to vote. And we're in courts all over the place, and we're going to get it stopped, and we're not going to let what they did 4 years ago happen again. Our country is being destroyed. Joe Biden wants to be the president for illegal aliens, but I will be the president for law-abiding Americans, every background, every walk of life, every race, religion, color, and creed. I'll be the president. Crooked Joe's mass amnesty comes in the wake of a series of horrific murders by, I call them the Biden illegals. They come in here so illegally. They just walk across, not vetted, not checked. All over the world they're coming from. The Congo and Africa, 22 people coming out of jails recently. And where are you from? The Congo. Where did you live? In a jail. What did you do? We don't want to say. But they come from Africa, from Asia. They come from the Middle East. They come from South America, but they come from all over the world. And they're really in many cases, very, very bad people. The only good thing is they make our gang members look like nice people by comparison. You know the good thing about Biden's administration, right? He makes Jimmy Carter look like a genius by comparison. Jimmy Carter's administration looked brilliant by comparison. In all fairness, he wasn't doing things like this. He wasn't allowing 17, 18 million people to walk into our country unchecked, unvetted. We have no idea who the hell they are. Day after day, week after week, more Americans are raped, kidnapped, and brutally killed at the hands of criminals. And Joe Biden released them into our country. He released them all. We had, by the way, 4 years ago, I wish they could put it up on the screen, we had the strongest border in the history of our country. Now we have the weakest border in the history of the world. In the history of the world. Oh, there it is. Take a look. That costs a little money to bring that sucker up here. But take a look at that. You see the red arrow on the bottom? That was the week I left office. What a sad day that was for the country. But that was the week I left office. See the red arrow on the bottom, that's the only one you have to even look at. That was the last week in office for Trump. Look at the number. That was the lowest number in the history of our country of illegals coming in. But you can also add drugs and other things, okay? But look at that number, and that was done by Border Patrol. Look at that number, and then look what happens as soon as I leave. Look at the numbers on the right. That's the largest influx of people ever to come to any country. There's never been anything like this. And we don't know where they come from, who they are. We don't have any records. There's no way to check it. You know, they come from some country that nobody ever heard of. They don't keep records, and we don't get their records, and we don't know what we're taking in. But you know one thing. You remember the snake. It's not going to be good, right? It's not going to be good. When you let in the snake, when you let in people that come out of prisons for murder, it's not going to end well. We're going to have a lot of problems, and we're going to get them out. We're going to get them out as fast as we can. We're going to have the largest deportation. We have no choice. Just last week, another Biden migrant was arrested for the savage murder of an innocent American woman. You probably all read about it. In Maryland, Rachel Morin, 37 years old, mother of 5, beautiful woman, nice woman, everybody loved her. Police believe that this animal was responsible for Rachel's killing, first murdered another young woman in El Salvador, came from El Salvador, murdered a woman, at least one, then fled across this Joe Biden open border. Just come on in, everybody. We won't even check your name. And came into the United States, after which he savagely attacked a 9-year-old girl and her mother in a home invasion in Los Angeles in an area that was supposed to be safe. And finally, he's charged with raping and murdering Rachel when she was out for a run. She was running, wanted to keep herself in shape before dumping her body into a drainage ditch. That's how they found her, into a drainage ditch. This monster should never have been allowed into our country, and if I was president, he would never have been able to come in. He would have never been able to come in. You see those numbers. Thank you very much. Just like the killer, and you've read about this too, Laken Riley, beautiful Laken Riley, would have never been in our country. Laken was the topper of her class. She wanted to be a nurse. She was the top student, the top everything. She was admired by everybody that knew her. And she was murdered by the same kind of a person that came in here under Biden's, but there is no policy. They just come in. They just came in. And, you know, I listened to Tom Homan the other day. Tom Homan's great, real pro. He said there's never been an administration so good on the border and so good generally, but he's a border guy. He's a pure, powerful border guy. He said there's never been an administration like Trump. It's the greatest border, the safest border we've ever had. All these murders that are taking place and all the murders that will take place, you're just seeing the beginning. They're just getting comfortable, you know? They're here for a little while. They're not going to start up. They want to find out. They're just getting comfortable. Now they're having fist fights with cops in the middle of the street. Think of that. In the middle of New York City, they have a guy fist fighting with a cop. I've seen cops shot. I've seen a lot of things. But a fist fight, that's really like crazy. And they're duking it out in the middle of the street. And if that happened to him in his country, they would have had him killed immediately. He would have been killed immediately. But here we're very nice. We're politically correct. Also recently in New York, an illegal alien with mutual and multiple prior arrests approached 2 13-year-old children with a machete in broad daylight, forced them into the woods, tied them together by the wrist, and raped the girl at a park in Queens. I grew up in Queens. When I'm reelected, we will begin removing these criminals, these horrible people from our midst, and we'll end up doing it immediately. We're going to do it immediately. It's not like we have a choice. Do we have a choice? We're not going to live like this. You know that area in Queens? I said that's where I grew up. I grew up right near that area. It was unthinkable. My parents, I'd go to the park. It was like 20 blocks away. I'd take a bicycle ride there. Nobody thought anything was going to happen. I did that for years. Played baseball and different things in the park. And you'd ride and you'd come back home. Mother would say, "Hi, darling, would you like something to eat?" Today, if you let your kid out of the house for 5 minutes, the kid is gone. You never see the. It's horrible what's going on. We're not living the proper life. This is not appropriate. What's happening? Our country is so badly run. And by the way, Kenosha, I saved Kenosha. Do you know that? When I was president, right? I saved it. Kenosha was about ready to go down the tubes, and the governor wouldn't move. He just wouldn't move, and I moved. I'm not supposed to. It's supposed to be the governor supposed to do it, the mayor and the governor. But we did a great job, and we saved a lot of different places, and some here. We saved a lot of places. Joe Biden's amnesty is also a cold-blooded betrayal of American seniors. By the way, did you see Nancy Pelosi? Her daughter did a documentary, Crazy Nancy. No, this happened just a couple of days. They found the documentary. Her daughter, who's a, quote, documentary maker, has a documentary where Nancy Pelosi is saying it's my fault, meaning her fault, not my fault, her fault, that she takes full responsibility for what's happening. That's as the event is happening. You know why? Because she was being honest for the first couple of hours, and I offered them 10,000 soldiers because I knew the crowd was going to be big. But I offered them 10,000 soldiers, and she turned it down. She said, oh, I don't like the look. She turned it down. And the mayor of Washington, D.C., which we're going to redevelop and make beautiful again, because right now it's a crime-ridden capital. But they turned it down. They turned down the... And now the J6 committee, I call it the unselect committee. They're unselect. They're the most unselect. We should have people like you. We should have put Vivek in the committee, right? And our congressman in the committee, right? But the unselect committee of political thugs, the evidence was so bad and so compelling against the Democrats and against the people that are supposed to be doing that job that they destroyed and deleted all of everything is deleted. Remember, they said I attacked Secret Service agents while I was in the back of a car. And I have friends that say, don't change that story. Man, you sound tough as hell. That's good. These guys are like 30 years old. One is a weightlifter. The other one's a karate top guy or something. I went for the one who was rebuffed. But my hands wrapped around the other one's neck. I would have been in trouble if I did that, I think. But what happened is when Secret Service went in, they totally told the proper story, which was nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. Then she supposedly changed. She said something went on there. But that's just one of many things. The Pelosi thing is something that is totally on the record. And they've deleted and destroyed all of the records. And they are really disgraceful people. Remember I said peacefully and patriotically, right? Peacefully. They didn't have that in my speech. They put my speech up, but they took phrases out like peacefully and patriotically. And these are very dishonest people. I say we have problems from the outside and problems from within. And I really believe that you have a smart president. I had no problem with China. I had no problem with Russia. I stopped Russia. Russia would have never gone into Ukraine. I stopped their pipeline going into Germany, which Biden immediately approved. The first week that he was there, he approved it. And Putin actually said, they say that you and I are friends. I hate to see you as an enemy. You stopped my pipeline. It was stopped. Going to Germany, going all over Europe, and Biden immediately approved it. But he killed our pipeline. The Keystone, he stopped our pipeline. The Keystone XL, 48,000 jobs. He stopped our pipeline. Biden and his party are hell-bent on legalizing every single Biden migrant who has violated our borders, dumping millions of people onto Medicare and Social Security and even Obamacare. By the way, all of these people going on to Social Security, Medicare, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, it's going to destroy all of them. It's not going to be able, it's not sustainable. They're going to ruin your Social Security. This guy's killing your Social Security. Biden and the Democrats are wheeling Granny off the cliff to give benefits to illegal aliens. They're giving the benefits to the illegals. And a stat that came out the other day is that almost all of the new jobs in this country are going to illegals. They're not going to our people. They're going to illegals. And that's why the black population, Hispanic population, is voting for me at levels that nobody's ever seen before in this country. Because they're not getting the jobs. In fact, they're losing their jobs. As president, I will fight for American seniors like nobody has ever fought before, and we will not be fighting for the Biden illegals, as I call them. I will fight for American workers, not for human traffickers. I will fight for the American dreamers, not the child smugglers and woman smugglers. And I will restore the sovereign borders of the United States of America. So help me God. Thank you very much. Thank you. You know, they actually have the best location. People think it's them, but it's not, because nobody sees you on camera. They're on camera for an hour and a half, depending on. And in numerous cases, perhaps they become Hollywood stars. You know, they'll say, who is that person with great star appeal behind Trump? Say, let's see. Got a few of them. You never know. Hey, you never know. What is a star, after all? What is a star? I will also take immediate action to save our economy. Our economy is doing terribly. Inflation has killed our economy. It's a nation buster. On the last day in office, inflation was at less than 1.4%, and as you know, it's now 10. Hey, look.
Then you will accept.
Introducing the new $5 meal deal at McDonald's. Now say that 5 times fast.
We're live from Georgia, a key battleground state in the race for the White House. In just moments, the current U.S. president will debate the former U.S. president as their party's presumptive nominees, a first in American history. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world to our studios in Atlanta. This is the CNN presidential debate.
This debate is being produced by CNN and is coming to you live on CNN, CNN International, CNN.com, CNN Max, and CNN Espanol. This is a pivotal moment between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump in their rematch for the nation's highest office. Each will make his case to the American people with just over 4 months until Election Day. Good evening, I'm Dana Bash, anchor of CNN's Inside Politics and co-anchor of State of the Union.
I'm Jake Tapper, anchor of CNN's The Lead and co-anchor of State of the Union. Dana and I will co-moderate this evening. Our job is to facilitate a debate between the two candidates tonight. Before we introduce them, we want to share the rules of the debate with the audience at home. Former President Trump will be on the left side of the screen. President Biden will be appearing on the right. A coin toss determines their positions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question and 1 minute each for responses and rebuttals. An additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response is at the moderator's discretion.
When it's time for a candidate to speak, his microphone will be turned on and his opponent's microphone will be turned off. Should a candidate interrupt when his microphone is muted, he will be difficult to understand for viewers at home. At the end of the debate, each candidate will get 2 minutes for closing statements. There is no studio audience tonight. Pre-written notes, props, or contact with campaign staff are not permitted during the debate. By accepting our invitation to debate, both candidates and their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden. And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern the economy? President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
I got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach in your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do was try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs, and we brought out in a position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of households where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. The price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination of what I was left with and corporate greed is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for an insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. And the situation is we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We had the greatest economy in the history of our country, and we have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID, and when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, a bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world, he's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that we find ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant. And the military, you know, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
You want allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
Not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cause countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So former